Welcome to another episode of Sex in San Francisco. And today we have Emperor Norton with us. Hello, Emperor Norton.
Good day.
So, what is your proclamation?
Well, when I declared myself the Emperor of the United States in 1859, I took a proclamation to one of the local newspapers, and it read, "At the peremptory request and desire of a large majority of the citizens of these United States, I, Joshua Norton, formerly of Algoa Bay, Cape of Good Hope, and now for the last 9 years and 10 months past of San Francisco, California, declare and proclaim myself Emperor of these United States."
So, Emperor, where do you live?
Oh, I lived in the what is now known as the Financial District on Commercial Street, which about 3 years ago was named for me. And I lived in a boarding house called the Eureka Lodgings, which sat about mid-block.
So, you were the Emperor Norton and you're living in a boarding house?
Yes, in a room 6 foot by 10 foot.
So, how did this idea of Emperor Norton came into your head?
Well, I was a merchant, and I had some fair amount of money when I got here. And then I tried to make even more money by cornering the market on rice. And my scheme failed terribly, and I lost every penny I had. Disappeared for a couple of years, came back, and declared myself the emperor.
So, how did the people of San Francisco treated you? And were you standing on the streets telling them that you were the emperor?
Oh yes, well, they loved the proclamation. It got published in a newspaper, and people embraced my imperial being from that day on. I would eat for free in restaurants, have the best seats in the theater. On opening night, people would rise in my honor. The police saluted me. Businesses wanted my endorsement. I rode transit for free. I even printed my own imperial treasury bonds.
Oh, wow. That is awesome.
That is how I financed the empire.
Great. So, Emperor Norton, how did San Francisco treated you?
Oh, very well. People would bow as I walked down the street. The police at one point were actually ordered to salute me. And children especially loved me. They would follow me everywhere I went. People wanted to know my ideas and my views. So I was a very well-treated emperor.
So, now let's talk. We're going to talk to Joseph.
Okay.
So,
Hi.
Joseph, hi. Is it hard to come out of the Emperor Norton's
No,
character?
I could do it in a flash. I've been doing it for so long.
How long you have been doing this?
I celebrated my 15th anniversary of being the emperor on July 10th of this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
15 years
15
of
years.
being Emperor Norton. So, tell us a little bit about how this idea came in your head.
Well, the simple answer to that question is I was unemployed and needed to find a job. I was a magazine editor for many years, and then around the year 2000, all the magazines disappeared, and I was left high and dry. I was underemployed, unemployed for long periods. And my husband and I took a tour where the tour guide made things up that didn't need to be made up. And we looked at each other and said, we can do better than this. And so we did. We decided, because we both have a background as performers, that we were going to do our tours in character and costume as people from San Francisco history. I was originally going to be Mark Twain, but I don't look like him. And he didn't live here that long. And so as I'm doing my research for the tour, I was vaguely aware of the emperor because of the Emperor Norton sourdough snacks I used to eat when I was a college student. And I was reading one of the biographies, and it was like a bolt of lightning hit me and said, this is who you should be. And it was the best decision I've made in my life.
So, Joseph, we want to know, as when you were young and you were in San Francisco, which school did you go to?
San Francisco State University.
And so, what was your major?
Theater.
Theater.
Yeah. And then I proceeded not to work in the theater until 15 years ago. Now the street is my theater.
Oh, okay. So, in this podcast, we talk about sex and we talk about San Francisco. So, does Emperor Norton had anything to do with sex? You were talking about some story.
Yes, I mean, We don't have any verification of anything specific. There are some love letters he wrote to a Minnie Wakeman that are in the Bancroft Library in Berkeley. He'd considered her as a consort, but she was actually promised to another. And he wrote a beautiful letter of apology to her. And that's the only thing that we have documented in terms of him seeking out any sort of love life. But the emperor did have a widow. And the widow was named Jose Sarria. And he's a very important figure in LGBT history because he started the imperial court. And he was the first empress of the imperial court. And went as far as to have bought the grave in front of Emperor Norton's with a matching tombstone at the Woodlawn Cemetery in Colma. The imperial court raises money for various charitable causes all throughout the Americas. It was started by Jose. There are now empresses and emperors of San Francisco elected every year. They have a one-year term. However, all emperors of San Francisco have in their title after Norton. So he passed away in 2016. I had got to meet him a couple times. Actually, the first time I ever met him face to face was at a fundraiser that the Countess and I both attended. And he looks me up and down and says, "Are you imitating my husband?" I said, "No, darling, I am your husband returned from the dead." We got along great after that until he noticed the Countess on my arm and said, "Is that the other woman?" So we got along just fine after that. We'd always run into Jose at the grave because the imperial court goes there every year around Valentine's Day, and also attended his funeral, his burial. So, as I like to say in character, indeed, I stood at my grave and watched them bury my widow.
Wow. So, Emperor Norton, I have taken a lot of San Francisco walking tours. So, which tour do you do?
Mine is one that starts in Union Square, and then goes down Maiden Lane by Lotta's Fountain, the Palace Hotel, up Montgomery Street to the Financial District, of course up Emperor Norton Place, and then we go to the Pyramid, the Barbary Coast area, and end in Chinatown. That's my main tour, but I also do one of the waterfront from the ferry building to the Hyde Street Pier. That's a schlep. And also I do one that is just Chinatown.
Okay, so how long you have been involved with the San Francisco walking tours?
It's 15 years now.
15 years.
Yes.
So what do you talk about in these walking tours?
Oh, there's so
because a
much.
lot of people would be interested because I've been taking these walking tours. When I came to San Francisco, more than 25 years ago, I have taken a lot of those tours and they are so interesting. Every time you take the tour, you get a new perspective of San Francisco. So
This is indeed true.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what is your favorite tour?
My original one. It is my best tour and the best written one, I would say. There's so much history in this city, and I learn new things all the time, and I incorporate that knowledge into my tours. My mentor, when I first started, told me that the tour you start with is not the tour you end up with, and he was absolutely right. The tour has changed tremendously over the years, and about 7 or 8 years ago, I decided to tell every story I knew along the original tour route in the detail that I could, and we call it the tour that never ends. It lasted 7.5 hours.
Wow.
No, I'm sorry, 6 hours and 37 minutes. That's right, almost 7 hours. But my favorite stories, well, of course, the story of Norton is one of my favorites. I love talking about the Palace Hotel, the Dewey Monument. Most people don't know that that is Alma Spreckels up there, who built the Palace of Legion of Honor Art Museum. I love talking about the architecture in the Financial District, the Pyramid, of course, and the Barbary Coast is an area that most people don't know about, the Jackson Square Historic District. It is 6 square blocks of buildings that date back to the 1850s and 60s that did not burn up in 1906. That's just a tremendous story, and that's probably my favorite.
Great. So what is your favorite San Francisco neighborhood?
Bernal Heights, where I live.
Yeah?
Actually, no, I would have to say that my favorite San Francisco neighborhood, where I've always wanted to live, is North Beach,
North Beach.
especially on Telegraph Hill. I just love North Beach.
Yeah. Telegraph Hill. Tell us, you tell so many stories in that area when you
Hmm.
do the walking tour. So tell us some story about Telegraph Hill.
Well, I think I'll start with the fake stories. A lot of tour guides, I've heard them tell this story, is that Coit Tower was meant to look like a fire hose novel. And that is absolutely incorrect. The architect, Arthur Brown Jr., who also designed City Hall, would bristle if you told him that. But the reason for the confusion is she was rescued by the fire department as a little girl, became very wealthy. When she died, she left a third of her estate, and all it said in the will was build something to beautify the city that I have loved. And she didn't specify which city, and she lived in Paris and New Orleans as well. So we hope she meant us because we spent the money on the tower. The reason for the confusion, though, is she also left $33,000 to build a monument to the firefighters who saved her life, and that's a statue in Washington Square in North Beach of 3 firefighters. The other fake story about Coit Tower is that the murals were painted by Diego Rivera. They were not. He painted 3 murals in the city, but none in Coit Tower.
So the Barbary Coast tour is quite interesting. I have taken that
Mhm.
2, 3 times. So tell us a little bit about the history of when there were only few men.
Mhm.
There were a lot of men and very few women.
Yes, there was back then. I think it was something like 100. I know the Countess is going to correct me on this, but 100 men to every 1 woman. But they started importing prostitutes from France. And so a lot along Pacific Avenue in particularly were brothels in those buildings, opium dens, concert saloons. There were also a lot of prostitutes in Chinatown, and they were known as the sing-song girls. But back then, because there were so few women, it was not uncommon for men to have sex with men back then. But there were no names for it back then. Nobody would identify as gay because they didn't have a name for it. It's just what men did when there were no women around. Same thing happens in prisons today.
Let's talk a little bit about your favorite restaurants in San Francisco.
Oh my, well, I like the old school places. So the Tattich Grill, Swan Oyster Depot, Original Joe's, those are my top 3 restaurants in the whole city. I haven't been back to the Big Four since they reopened, but I'm anxious to go there once I can save up enough money to be able to afford to eat there. So those are the sorts of places I really love.
Yeah, San Francisco is getting so expensive.
It is,
So
indeed.
how are we going to survive in this city?
That's a good question. I mean, this city reinvents itself constantly. So I'm not too worried about that. There's a good reason why the Phoenix is on our flag in San Francisco, because the city has risen from the ashes literally many times. And that spirit of reinvention, which the Emperor certainly represents, is in the DNA of San Francisco.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about where were you born and how did you end up in San Francisco?
Well, I was born in Santa Monica and came here for the first time when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And my dad was doing some business out at the airport, and he put me on a tour bus. And I just fell in love with the city. I said, this is where I want to be. Oddly enough, I would work for that company 50 years later as a tour guide.
Oh, the tour. So
Yeah.
you were kind of interested in tours since you were a little boy.
I guess, I mean, it's not something that I really consciously thought about, but it fits my skill set very well. So then I came here for college in 1974 and stayed 2.5 years and went back down to Southern California. Was here for another 4 years in the 80s, 84 to 88, went back. And then I got back here in 2006, and I'm never going to leave again. Again, the only way they're going to take me out of this city is in a box.
So San Francisco, how San Francisco has changed your life? Have you ever thought about that?
It's brought me fame. I'm a minor celebrity in this city, a D-list, as I like to say. The city has given me so much over the last 15 years, so many gifts, the things I get to do, the people I get to meet. It's just been astounding. And as I said earlier, it has been the peak experience of my life. And it's just made me love San Francisco even more, if that's possible.
So Emperor Norton, in those tours which you do, did ever something happen, any event which was like somebody asked you some kind of question or something which you can't get it out of your head?
Yeah, there's a couple of those actually. One of my favorites is I run into celebrities randomly, and my favorite was running into John Cleese of Monty Python. I was walking on air the rest of the day. But I think one of my favorite times was I was walking up Montgomery Street and somebody leans out of their car and yells at me, "Hey Norton, how's your rice?" Cruel man that was. But part of the joy of doing this, and makes me really glad I took improv classes in college, is interacting with people on the street. And I never know what's going to happen. If somebody's walking toward me with a bouquet of flowers, I just assume it's for me. Why, thank you, I'll say. And always gets a good laugh. Somebody says, "I like your hat." I'll tell them I like theirs too, even if they're not wearing a hat. Just things like that. Last week there was a record release party at that old bank building on Montgomery and Post, and there was a long line of people waiting to get in. Well, I just assumed they were there to see me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you are pretty famous.
I get recognized on the streets even. In fact, it just happened. I was walking toward here, and I run into this couple, and they were on a tour that I did for a wedding a couple of years ago, and they remembered me.
Oh,
And
wow.
so they took their picture with me.
So they invite you to different events,
Yes.
and weddings and tours.
Oh yeah, I
and
perform weddings.
premieres.
I'm ordained. Weddings, funeral, bar mitzvahs, and if I have my cigar cutter, I can do a bris.
Ordained. What does that mean?
I basically signed up online with the Universal Life Church, but that's enough to let me legally do weddings.
Oh,
I
okay.
perform 2 at City Hall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're like a minister.
Yes. Well, rabbi, I guess.
Excellent. So you said you had a partner.
Yes, my partner is named Rick Sheldon. He's my husband. We've been legally married for, I think, 11 years now. We've been together since 2008. And well, we're both performers. And so when he decided to do his tours, he did them as the Countess Lola Montez of Lansfeld, who was actually an Irish Spanish dancer. Does adult-only tours of the Barbary Coast and Chinatown. We occasionally appear together. It has happened, but we don't try to do tours together because there's not enough air in the room for both of us.
So Joseph, Emperor Norton, what would you like to say to those guests who are wanting to come to San Francisco and wanting to see the city? So what would you tell?
Don't believe everything you read in the newspapers or see on TV. This city is wonderful and clean. You know, there are certainly parts of the city you don't want to go into. It's a beautiful city. There's always something to do. You will never be bored in San Francisco.
And what parts of the city would you say don't go?
The Tenderloin and 6th and Market.
You know, but that they also have a little bit of their own culture.
They do.
I've
They
been
do. And I
reading
mean,
for-
there are certainly parts of the Tenderloin that one should see, like where Compton's Cafeteria was, where they had the riot. Now, the Tenderloin Museum has just closed for a while due to water damage from a fire upstairs. I think that's what it was. But it's a good institution. So there are definitely things to do in the Tenderloin. Just, I guess the thing I would tell people is be street aware. Always be aware of what's going on around you. And that's really true of anywhere. Things can happen anywhere, but that's true of any major city as well.
Absolutely.
So come here and love us, and we'll give you love back.
And come and take a tour of Emperor Norton's walking tours.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much.